Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where we take your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and we break them down into digestible bites. And then we read it dramatically back to you. All panels, text, and images have been altered to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by the respective companies. Today's installment, we will be looking at the first story arc from the acclaimed Powers comic book, which is now a TV show on the PlayStation Network. Without further ado, we present to you Who Killed Retro Girl. We open on the Naked City, an unnamed city, where we see the police are called to action. We first meet Detective Christian Walker, who's been called into duty to deal with a negotiation with a potential superpowered villain named Flinch, who's held up with a 7-year-old girl in his apartment. Detective Walker quickly de-escalates the situation, but Flinch tries to escape by flying through the roof of his apartment with a rocket pack, and he crash lands outside where he's arrested. The 7-year-old girl named Callista is handed over to Detective Walker to deal with, and he takes her back to the precinct, which we soon discover is the Powers division that deals with superpowered crimes. Before Detective Walker can get Callista into the proper protective custody with social services, we are introduced to the newest detective in the Powers division, Dina Pilgrim, who has recently requested a transfer into this department. But before they can get to know each other, Detective Walker is called away for a homicide, and the police chief sends Dina, his new partner, with him. The two quickly drive to the crime scene with little time to get to know each other, and they pull up to find the beloved superheroine, Retro Girl, dead with her throat slit open. Throughout the day, the media is constantly covering the murder of Retro Girl by tracking the footsteps of the Powers division. It's a media frenzy to say the least. Meanwhile, the case begins with Walker and Pilgrim in the morgue talking to the coroner about any leads that they can find. They learn that it will take time because it's very difficult to do an autopsy on a power because of their superpowered resistances. The detectives leave the coroner to work, and they quickly are informed of a visitor on the roof who is none other than the mysterious Zora, whom is also a known power. Zora speaks to Christian and Dina, but Dina gets a feeling that Zora knows Christian. During the conversation, Zora asks if they've talked to Johnny Royale, who is a nemesis of Retro Girl and Zora. Zora cannot speak with him herself because he's filed a restraining order against her, and the police are in a difficult situation as well because of the ongoing $150 million lawsuit between Royale and the police. Zora leads them to their investigation, and the detectives head straight over to the Royale Club to speak with Johnny Royale. However, when they get there, they soon discover that Johnny Royale has already been taken into custody by Detective Walker's ex-partner, Detective Cutter. The ambitious Detective Cutter attempts to interrogate Johnny Royale, but he coolly reveals no information about the murder. Before they can really get anywhere in the conversation, the police chief releases Johnny Royale by shutting off the power-dampening green light in the interrogation room, out of fear of retaliation over the lawsuit that they've already got going on. Johnny then disappears in a blink using his teleportation powers. An argument ensues between Cutter and the police chief, and Cutter is dismissed for the day. With their lead buried, the detectives go back to the coroner to see if there's any progress in the autopsy. After a lengthy conversation, they discover that a very fancy red paint has been found underneath Retro Girl's fingernails, which gives them another lead to look into, another power named Triphammer. The detectives immediately go to Triphammer's house, and they question him about his relationship with Retro Girl, where he clearly admits that they were having an intimate relationship. However, he tells them to their face that he did not murder Retro Girl, and furthermore, he would never murder anybody simply because Triphammer is one of the most decorated superheroes in the United States. After the questioning, Dina picked up on the fact that Triphammer seemed to know Detective Walker, and after multiple instances in which the other powers seem to know Detective Walker really well, she decides to ask him if he himself is a power, and he simply tells her no, so she kicks him square in the chest and knocks him to the ground. Dina wanted to test him to see if he was a power, and then she tells him about her suspicions because of the conversations with Zora and Triphammer. He tells her that he knows these people because he's had a few years under his belt. He's worked a lot of cases with some of them, and they know him. He's a face of the department. After all of this, Dina has to help Walker take care of Callista, who has still not been taken to social services. They take the girl to Walker's place, and Dina takes care of her since Christian is not very good at this whole fathering thing. But before going to bed, Callista asks Walker a question. What does the chaotic cheek mean? He immediately looks at the crime scene photos where the words chaotic cheek are posted above the corpse of Retro Girl. The next day, the two detectives hit the streets to follow up on the chaotic cheek clue, questioning all of the superhero individuals in their fair city. But once again, nothing turns up. However, they do decide to go question Triphammer again, and he actually has a little gift for Detective Walker that he tells Detective Walker to only open up in private, which only arouses Dina's suspicions even more. They then decide to go question all of the supervillains that they can find about the chaotic cheat clue, and they finally get a useful answer from a locked up supervillain named Psych, who seems to have a photographic memory. He tells them that he's seen the graffiti in 17 places in the city, and will write them all down for the detectives. Psych then suggests that they all question the locked up supervillain known as the Wolf, who is in solitary confinement for killing 27 people on a boat. But that doesn't go well either, as he doesn't know anything and simply antagonizes Walker about some exploit in the past. Before they leave, the Wolf tells Walker to send his apologies to Detective Cutter, who he couldn't answer the questions of either. Back at the precinct, Walker and Cutter get into a verbal fight over the procedure of this case, and there seems to be some unresolved issues between the two ex-partners that is still unclear to Dina. After the fight, Walker storms off and Dina goes over to Walker's desk to open up the gift that Triphammer gave him, and it turns out to be a photograph of Retro Girl with the superhero named Diamond, who looks an awful lot like her new partner, Detective Christian Walker. Just then, Walker comes back in and he calls Dina a total bitch for opening up his private gift. 2 days pass, and all of the leads have turned up as dead ends. The chaotic cheek wasn't helpful, and the coroner is at a loss. This all leads Detective Walker to the despicable last resort of going public, and he goes onto the news to ask the public if they have any information about the chaotic cheek graffiti. While they sit and wait for the results, Dina and Christian have a face-to-face confrontation about their partner situation. Christian doesn't want to work with Dina because he doesn't trust her, but she refuses to transfer out of the Powers Division. She tells him that she transferred to the Powers Division because she just wanted to work with Detective Walker. Yeah, she's interested in the Powers-related homicides, but she mostly just wanted to work with Detective Walker because she felt that she could learn a lot from him. So he decides to open up and talk about his past. It's been nearly 4 years since he lost his powers, and he still doesn't know why. During a battle with the Johnny Royale gang, he was fighting for his life, and then suddenly his powers disappeared. When it looked like he was clearly losing the fight and was about to be electrocuted, Retro Girl flew into the battle and saved his life. And that was the end of his career as Diamond. As for Detective Cutter, the reason that they broke up is that Cutter just wouldn't shut up about Walker's past life. And that's why he doesn't like partners. At the end of the conversation, both detectives put their motivations on the table, and Dina recognizes that they have totally bonded now. Just then, Walker's beeper goes off, and the detectives rush to their new lead to question the employee of a copy center. The man tells them that he knows a man named John Jackson Stevens. The two of them were a part of an anti-costume campaigning group, and this guy talked about making a power drainer, just like the one that the police station has. It turns out that the chaotic cheek graffiti is the name of their club, so when it happened, he just assumed that it was Stevens. They raid John Jackson Stevens' home to find it empty, but there is a power drainer and a poster of Powers with Retro Girl's picture crossed out. Though they left the raid empty-handed and they were a little distraught over the fact that they've got no new leads outside of this, when they get back to the precinct, they see Stevens spray painting the words chaotic cheek on the police department. They take him immediately into the interrogation room with the green light glowing, suppressing all superpowers, and John Jackson Stevens sits there staring at the green light. He's in awe of the police technology. Pilgrim and Walker begin to question him, and it's here that they find out that he's just obsessed with Retro Girl. He says that killing Retro Girl was doing the world a favor. By killing Retro Girl in her prime, she wouldn't get old and become an embarrassment later in her life. Instead, her early death would give her a godlike rock star status like the musicians that die young, like Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, or even Kurt Cobain. By killing her, he's preserved her, so that the city will always have her. Walker and Pilgrim then look on at the psychopath as he says that he will have his day in court so that everyone in the world will hear him and they will thank him. And then he asks for his lawyer. As they're preparing to take the killer from the police station to lock up, they see the giant red machine Triphammer fly through the roof and assassinate John Jackson Stevens in front of the detectives by turning him into sheer dust. The police attempt to shoot him, but his armor is impenetrable, and Triphammer explains his actions to the police by saying that he ended this whole incident honorably. The trial would have been a media frenzy, and it would have just glorified the murder, so he ended it. He became judge, jury, and executioner, and this would be his last great act for the city, as he would leave the country and they would never find him again. With that, he flies into the sky, leaving the pile of dust of the man who had once killed Retro Girl. With physical evidence in front of them and a taped confession, the case is closed, and Detective Walker can spend a night at home with Callista, whom they still haven't found a new home for. While sitting there, Walker asks Callista how she knew about Chaotic Cheek in the first place, and she tells him that she had a dream where an unknown girl in it approached her and said that if she could find the words on a wall, it meant that it would help her. The girl in the dream said that Christian was a great guy and to not worry about her, but only if she told him nicely, "Don't worry about me, Christian." With Detective Walker pondering Callista's strange dream, he watches an impromptu candlelight vigil on television in honor of Retro Girl. And with that, we leave the city in a moment of silence as various powers fly by the moonlight sky. And once again, this is another indie book for you guys. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like. The indie books that get the most likes will continue on the channel. If you didn't like the story, well, let us know why in the comments down below. And don't forget, if you have a PlayStation Network subscription, you can watch the TV show right now. Now, if you want to chat with us, make sure you go to our Twitter @Comicstorian or go to our subreddit r/Comicstorian. And don't forget, we have a gaming channel known as Eligible Monster where we bring you gaming variety videos. All of those links will be in the description down below, and I'll see you guys next time right here at Comicstorian.